I'm Dan Canada, and I teach in the math department. I teach a wide range of math for them, but lately my particular focus is working with math for people who want to be teachers. So I'll teach future math teachers. And my own background is myself as a teacher. I started off as a math teacher, and I'm currently licensed in the state of Washington. I've taught in elementary, middle school, high school, now in college. So I share this with you because it's a real privilege for me to work with these people now who are looking to go on to teach our kids. A bit of history would go with that, since I'm in math, and then you actually look at the technology behind teaching math. You know, at some point, if you've lived long enough, it's, calculators, wow, should they be in the classroom? Yes, no, we shouldn't use them, a type of technology, but it starts there. And then, of course, being technology, it changes rapidly. So I'm old enough to think, oh, calculators, now we have graphing calculators, should we use them? Can we talk about graphs, and instead of drawing it all or doing it on the paper, can we actually demonstrate it? And then the technology changes. Now we don't have graphing calculators, now we've got computers and applets, and now we can do all this. So the technology expands, but as an educator, I have to ask, how does this help the end result, which is the teaching and the learning for their students, meaning K-12, the kids in the classroom. And then I also get to able to look, how does that affect in the college environment with these prospective or pre-service teachers? How can that get them to relate to the material? So yeah, technology changes, and you have to ask yourself what works, what doesn't. One thing I find for myself, you don't really know until you try it. You can look at the research and think about what people say, this works, this doesn't. But for me, part of it's personality, but part of it's philosophy. If I see something, my inclination is a new kind of technology. My inclination is to say, what can I get it to do for me with these students? So I've been fortunate at Eastern that we have a lot of things that we can use. I've been here 8 years, and I can tell you that a lot of the things that I've done, of course, just in 8 years, never done anywhere else. Things like Smartboards. Now you see them all over the place. We have public school districts getting grants to put all these Smartboards in. Here at Eastern, we start seeing these physical Smartboards being installed. Who's using them? Who doesn't use them? How could they be used? That's just one example. So in my math classes, I start thinking, all right, so now we're drawing on the Smartboard. We can capture those lessons. We can modify them. We can replay them. And then I start thinking of, this is where you get to have your creative streak going. You think, what else could we do? Well, I noticed that in math education, we're often working with different manipulatives, different toys, if you will, but we're using blocks and tiles and circles and we've got all this stuff out there, and we're essentially modeling mathematics. But what happens is when you want to share what you're doing with your teammates or your classmates who are there in the room, it's very difficult. They're either all going to stand up and come over and look at the table, and you think, well, they'll stand up in front of the classroom. Well, you can't, because you have all these base 10 blocks, and you've got these triangles and polygons. So we started bringing in some video cameras and still cameras. I'll just describe one project that I did. We got this published. Imagine different table groups. This is over in Kingston Hall. Got these table groups of students. Gave them digital cameras. I said, I want you to archive what you're doing, kind of like a slideshow. Here's what I did. Here's what happened next. Here's this problem I'm trying to solve. These teams of students were able to get those digital photographs taken, imported into the computer, put up on the Smartboard, and then when we're sharing and we're discussing what's happening, they're up there, they're annotating it, they're drawing on there, they're showing what's happening. Next slide, and we're able to save it, replay it next week. Do you remember when so-and-so said this? And how would you think one of your students might react to this? Again, using that technology, things that we had on hand, they were very adept at using those cameras to get those pictures going, but in a new way, to import what they're actually doing into the Smartboard, reflect on it, with the purpose of promoting that class discussion and generating some ideas which we can record and save for future use. So that's just an example. Smartboards, I had never used them before I came to Eastern. Specifically, there's a one big motivation for using this wireless slate was, well, first of all, we had them in the department due to one of my colleagues. When you have shared interest in technology, you tend to feel that that energy feeds off each other and you get new ideas. So Dr. Keith Adolphson had ordered these wireless slates. Oh, what do they do? Well, I found that they basically were like a wireless Bluetooth connected mouse, but also you could draw on it. And with the smart notebook software, what I found is it mimics a smartboard. Basically, everything that I did on the actual hard, wired smartboard up there, I could do this on the slate with the advantage that I could take that slate to the different table groups. Instead of the students coming up and writing on this, if there were some different slates out there, oh, what do you see over there? Here you go, show me what you see. And the student could take that and draw and write. But with a really big advantage for me, which is that I no longer need that actual big smartboard. If I don't have it, and this leads me to what you were talking about, when I went on a Fulbright scholarship to Africa, I didn't see any smartboards. I was in villages in Tanzania and other places, and it made me think even here of Eastern, of the rooms where, oh, there's no smartboard in this. There's just a screen and a projector, but not a problem. Because now I have my laptop and a projector, and I've got that wireless slate. So I can project that and essentially mimic all the functions that I want of the smartboard, being able to show the slides, demonstrate student work, have them share their thinking, all on this Bluetooth wireless slate, and it's very lightweight too. So that's an example of that. And you asked about Tegrity, and there's two components of that. I'll speak to the teaching aspect of it and the research aspect. I'll speak to the research first because part of the use in technology and where we get the funding for this is you do need to disseminate those ideas. When you have something that works and you have other colleagues around the world, where my colleagues are, they think, what works? What doesn't work? You've got to find a way to publish and write about some of the cool things. This is something that I like to do. It's very difficult work, but you can't publish research unless you have something interesting to say. And you don't have something interesting to say until you work on it and capture it. When I say capture it, that's leading me to the video component. So some of the things I've already described anecdotally, like when my students were working, photo, video, smartboard, slate, I need a way to capture some of the learning environment in a way that I can share it with other people who are off campus or all around the world. So I started, before I knew about Tegrity, which is a fantastic streamlined way of doing what I used to do, I'd have video cameras here or there, or I just try to videotape people or video people's work, find a way to import it. Now we have YouTube and other ways, so I could reflect on these videos and share what's happening. Here's how we're using the technology. So I was very research-minded at the beginning. So now I come to Eastern, this is only in the last year. Well, Tegrity what does that do? Well, it really facilitates lecture capture and also capturing anything else I want to see that's happening in the classroom. I can use Tegrity to do that. So I said, well, let me learn about that. Now, I mentioned research, how I wanted to capture this to reflect and publish, but of course, I think Tegrity was probably designed foremost for the students and the teaching environment. So, what do I do with Tegrity now, or what have I done? I only started using it last quarter when Dave Dean and Nick, they said, here's how easy it is, and I think it was Grant was in there too. He said, it's this fast. Now, as much as I love technology, I want it to be intuitive. I want it to be easy, and I don't want to mess around with it too much. And that's what impressed me about Tegrity, especially when I sat with Dave and he said, oh, did you know about it? It's this tab right here. Click on it, and it just starts recording, apparently. And it goes somewhere. I think the tech people will tell you, the cloud or the server or something. I don't know where it goes. But I wanted to try it in my classroom because of the cool things that I was doing, or thought I was doing and wanted to capture, whether it was cool or not. But instead of having to set all this stuff up, here's what I do. So I'll describe a little bit of what happened last quarter. I'm in this room in Senior Hall, and I think it was Nick and Brent. They came and they set me up. They got me the webcam. That's right, which I didn't need if I had a camera in the laptop. They helped me set up this little camera. They said, just click here and it will go. And I had a bit of a learning curve for me. What does Tegrity do? What exactly is it capturing? And so I can tell you a little bit about that as well. So in winter quarter, last quarter I used it, I tried to lecture capture using Tegrity virtually every class that I did, for better or worse, just to see what it would capture. Here's what Tegrity did for me. Number one, I've described some of the smartboard that I use. Now, Senior Hall, where I was, is a great example. It had no physical smartboard. So I'm in this Senior Hall, very nice room, very technology heavy. There's a few cameras, I didn't know what they did, and some other things, a podium, I forgot, very good. But I'm up there doing my usual thing, come up with a laptop, no smartboard. But I've got my wireless Slate and I've got my lectures. Hit record on Tegrity, and Tegrity started capturing, it was like a screen capture. It would capture all the things that I was doing on my computer, which are reflected on the projector and onto the screen, and I'm controlling with the Slate. Meanwhile, this other webcam, I guess they'd call it, another camera was set up on a tripod, would also capture me. And the end result, when you can go and you can see on our Tegrity examples, you see these two windows. One of these windows is, like, for example, me doing something. The other window is the computer, what I'm doing on the computer. And getting used to that is what I really spent winter quarter doing. I do have to tell you, I learned a lot, and now I'm ready for the next phase, how I want it to pay off for my students, for their learning. But anytime with technology, the first step is you have to learn, what can it do for you? What can it do for me? What can it do for these students? And that's what I felt winter quarter was a lot, is me learning about Tegrity. It is very easy to use, but I wouldn't say it's limitations. I would say, what are the opportunities? What can it do for you? And that's where I ended up with at the end of winter quarter. I know exactly why I wanted to use Tegrity. Aside from the research component, for the teaching component, I wanted Tegrity to be as a resource for the students. So I have a vision of what I want. And I'll describe that for you with the caveat that I'm not exactly there yet, but I'm moving there. Here's the end result, what I want Tegrity to do. We have some lessons. Maybe there's something we've done in class. I'm working on a lesson, for example, now in probability. Great things we're doing. Describing the problems, getting the student discussion, working out some of these problems in different ways. You have to remember, this is a class for teachers. So I'm not as interested in just one way of solving a problem as I am in multiple perspectives. What do you think a student will do? What do you think a student might do? How would you do this? How do you think a student would do this? If a student were to say this, what do you think that means? There's a lot of interaction going on. I want a way to capture that and archive it so that, for two reasons. Number one is students who aren't there physically in the classroom, they can access that from offsite. In a sense, I'm talking online, distance, remote learning, people who aren't physically there. But even the students who are there, to go back later, say the next week, and say, I want you to go back and look at that Tegrity capture we did, or that lecture capture we did the week before, and I want you to ask these questions. In other words, when you look at something a second time, you think of new questions, you think of new ideas that you hadn't, certainly is the case for me. I've been doing this for 25, 26 years, doing mathematics teaching. It's always something new. Same for these students. So getting some kind of lecture, I'm saying lecture, but of course there's more to it than just lecture involved. The whole classroom environment that we're capturing, to be able to reflect on that later is a big piece. But in order for my vision to take effect, it needs to be something that's watchable, that it actually was true to what I was trying to capture, and that's the fine tuning of learning to use Tegrity. At the moment, some of the things I've watched, I've recorded hours, and some of it is very good, and some of it I'm just flying in and out of the screen because I'm quite active in my teaching. So I'm working with the e-learning folks to address some of the things that I want, and they're very supportive. Another good thing for us here at Eastern.